Hey guys, welcome to my channel, welcome to the stream and another chapter. I believe it's chapter 4. Working on that guy right there. That is our 1998 Pontiac Firebird Ram Air by Revell. We're gonna run the intro and we're gonna get into it. Okay, so we are back and we're going to go over a little bit of stuff that's happened since last time. Last time we got our engine painted, we got the pulleys put on the front, we got our exhaust manifolds put on there. Off camera, I've done a little bit of painting on the exhaust manifolds, but I'm not done with it yet. So I got a little bit more work to do on that. We got our seats assembled and primered, and I added seat belt buckles to them, which I'll show you in a minute. We got our master cylinder and brake booster and our clutch and brake pedal assembly. That's assembled. Off camera, I took the front suspension off of the sprues so I could work on it. Something I screwed up on our rear exhaust that comes out after the muffler. I'll talk about that in a minute. The other thing we did, as you can see, I've been kind of doing a little bit of mock-ups of how this is all going to fit. Well, I have our T-roof assemblies. The T-roof assembly is pretty much done. Let me change the camera so you can get a good look at this. I did post pictures of it online on my Instagram and my X channel, so you should be able to check those out if you check out the link in the description box below. I don't know what just fell. Something stupid probably. Yeah, so here's our T-roofs. It looks a little funny because I've got my Sharpie on there, and so it doesn't look all that pretty, but that's going to get covered up with primer anyway. And we've got our weather stripping that goes around there that would be for the T-roof top, and there you go. So yep, that's done. All right, so that's done. So one thing I did have to do is I added a little bit of putty where I had cut through there. So, of course, without paint on there, I'm not sure exactly how it looks. But a couple of things I want to do today. Because my friend wants this thing lowered, I have to make sure that I've got my rear axle and my front axle lined up, which is why I have this tape on there and why I have this. It's giving me a good guide on how this is going to go together. So what I want to do is we put this in and mock it up how it's all going to sit in here like this. Okay, and so I have our rear axle. Where are we? Because I want to show you guys the whole process. So our rear axle is going to sit in like so, just like that. So our rear, I don't know what these are called, control arms, these basically go right up against the chassis, the frame, and that sits exactly, that's basically as low as I can get this thing, at least without melting things and bending the plastic and doing weird things. I want to keep this relatively realistic and not just have this car like slammed. So what I did was I just pinpointed where the center of the axle is, and I just put a little dot on my masking tape there, just so I could reference where this is going to sit. Okay, so then what I need to do, take this off of here, for the front I need to know how this is going to go together. So I'm going to take my glasses and change them here. I've already test fit this, so we've got two pegs, one here and one here. See those two pegs there? One here and here. Okay, those go into these two holes. There's two holes right there, one here and one here in our engine mount. Okay, and so we put our steering rack forward. That means this goes like this, and we line those up. and it sits in like that. And it sits in pretty flat. It doesn't give us really any room to realistically bend our control arms. You know, ideally, if this was real, if this was a real car, you know, it would bend at the hinge here and here, and that's where you would get your flex and your thing would go down. Your suspension would move. But we don't get that option here. So, as you can see, my front suspension, the center of the front here is very much lower than this line. It's not a lot lower, it's only a little bit lower. So really all I need to do is just move this. And so what I'm going to do, all I did was, I've decided, now I did a little test fit. We have our front shocks, and they're going to go in just like this, with this peg going into that hole right there, right behind there, this pillar, and then this little flat bar goes into that little notch. And so it goes right up in here just like this. And it sits just like that. Okay? And so there's one shock in the front. Okay? And that's how that goes. You guys with a keen eye might notice that I've got a hole up there. See that hole there? Up in the top? That's because I've drilled that hole. In anticipation, I'm going to be cutting this peg completely off, and I'm going to move it up to where that hole is. So what I did is I drilled a hole on each side in the same spot before I dropped it on the floor. I drilled one on each side in the same spot so that I could take a pin, like any pin. I could pick it, maybe a piece of, maybe a paper clip. Paper clip, have I drilled the hole big enough to fit a paper clip in there? Yes, I have. Okay, so I can put a paper clip in that hole. So what I can do is I can clip this off completely, and in the very center of it, put part of the paper clip as a guide, and will actually strengthen it when I put this on there, and it will be that much higher, and I will drop the front end lower, and bingo, there you go, done. Okay, so that's the plan for that. We'll do that in a little bit. We have seat belt buckles that I 3D printed and put on our front seats to add a little bit of detail onto that. If my camera will focus. Okay. Now, how did I make these? Let's take a moment, let's pause. Okay. How did I get 3D printed seatbelt buckles? Well, I started off with Google. Went on Google and I searched seatbelt buckle, and went for images, and I found an image of one just like this. Okay, and I took that picture and I put it onto. Then I went to Tripo AI or Tripo 3D, whatever you want to call it. I searched for Tripo AI, and so it's TRIPO space AI. Search for that, and they'll come up with their website. And with that website, you can convert a regular photograph into a 3D image. And once that's done, you can download it as an STL file. So I did that, and I did it in 4K. And then that creates a nice big file. It's big, it's like 45 megabytes or something like that. So then I take that file and I put it into Bamboo Studios. Bamboo Studios, of course, is a slicing program for 3D printing. I don't have a Bamboo printer though. The reason why I use that program is because I can simplify the file without really losing any of the detail. And what that does is it shrinks the file size so that I can then take that picture, that 3D file, and I can put it into Tinkercad. Tinkercad, of course, is the free web-based program that allows you to create images, create blocks, figures, all kinds of things. You can do all kinds of editing of three-dimensional files or pictures. So then I could do that, I could clean it up. So with Tinkercad, I actually went into Tinkercad, and on the edge of our little buckle, I actually put the word press in there like you would see on a real life seatbelt buckle. But of course, we shrink it down to the size that we need. This is only 3 millimeters wide. It's pretty good scale for an actual seatbelt buckle. So then I could shrink it down, save that, export it back to my computer as a edited file, so that I could do things like add the little belt to it, coming off the little strip that comes off the bottom of them. I could make it longer, make it shorter, I could do all that stuff, and now I've got a file that I could actually work with and print. But then I had the idea, what about older cars? Older cars don't use the black and red seatbelt buckles. You see, in older cars, they had that chrome square one with the big square button in the middle of it. So then I went back to Google, and I searched for seatbelt buckles again, and then found this image, and then did the same process. And then I went and I put them in my slicer, I cloned a whole bunch of them, and I came up with this little monstrosity right here. This is a whole bunch of seatbelt buckles of the 2 different types and sizes that I can use in the future for just about any car build that I do in the future. And I've got lots. You can see there's the male side there, and then we've got our female ones, right? This is the that's the older style. Where's an old style one here? There's an old style right there, right by my finger. My camera doesn't really want to focus on it, but it's there. That's the older style, and of course we've got the newer styles here. Yeah, just like that. All right, so you'll have to trust me that you can actually see the button. My camera doesn't really. My camera's going crazy and doesn't really doesn't understand what to focus on with so much of this. But yeah, so there you go. So that's where I got these seatbelt buckles and how I got them. I'm still contemplating whether I'm going to upload the files to my cults page. I might do that. Maybe charge $1 or something like that for them. I don't know. We'll see. So anyway, that's that. So those are the front. I actually added a couple of them to the center of the back seat also, because the back seat's got those also. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. So let's actually, that's kind of a cap of what I've been up to in the last couple of days off camera. Yeah, woohoo. Back to this where I screwed up. So I had mentioned last time that I had drilled out the center of the rear exhaust pipe. Well, I didn't drill it enough, okay? And so I went to drill it some more, and in drilling it some more, it wound up melting, and now I've got this really ugly looking exhaust pipe sticking off the end there that I have to clean up. I have to fix that. So fortunately, I happen to have some round pipe styrene that is the same diameter as the exhaust tip, so I can just kind of cut that off and put this on instead and kind of work with that. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I also took the mount where this was sitting and I moved it back here. Looking at the chassis and where this mounts, they had this big tab, and it was going to mount back here, and that's where it would glue, just in this empty space rearward of this little whatever this is. Okay, it would be back here. I decided to move it and put it so it's going to be back here behind it, So when you actually look at the back of the car, it's going to sit more like this. It's going to sit more like that now. Okay. Before, the thing would have been back there, but it's going to go there now. All right. So what I'm going to do is let's cut this exhaust pipe off here, right about where it starts to widen. It should be right about here. That's good enough. All right. And we're just gonna put this on instead and glue it on in its place. Let's just trim this up a little bit here. Having drilled this one out too. Now this one, the walls on this one were a little thicker than what they are now, but I can deal with that. So I actually want to just file this down. I want to shove it in there just a hair. What I really should do is paint that flat black right now before I even glue this on there. But we're okay. Let's add a little glue onto this. Put this on there. That's pretty much where it's going to go. I'll give us a minute to put the exhaust in its spot. See, there's this little peg that just goes into this hole like that, and that kind of lets us line up our muffler where the muffler goes. So I want this more straight, like that, and that's about perfect. Okay, just add a little more glue now that it's in there. I want to make sure it's straight. Just hold that for a second, let the glue do its thing. There we go. Okay. That ought to do it. Oh, see, she wants to. I'm gonna have to hold it like this for a minute and just let the glue hold it. She wants to keep on moving on me, and I don't want her to move on me. So that should be good like that. So I just need to hold this in this position and let that sit. So maybe let's try that. There we go. That'll hold it. We'll put this aside. Let that do its work, okay? So let's focus on our front suspension now. Let's get this thing lowered. So we have to take this thing off, okay? But I don't want to have it going in any farther. I don't want to lose any of my depth. So I want to have this trimmed off as close as I can to the actual thing. So if I were to just snip it, I would lose a bunch of material, and I don't want to lose material. So that means back to that really awful little saw blade that took me so long on the T-roof. I need to, and if I could, there's like a little peg that's sticking off the side. If I can, I want to try and preserve that. They stopped making them. Oh, you know, I looked up as I cut and now it hit the floor. I don't know where it went. I looked up to read the chat just as it cut through. There it is. Okay, so we have this one cut off. And it was cut off as close to the thing as I could get. And it's not perfect, but that's okay. So I'm just going to file this down. So we've got a nice smooth surface. Okay. All right. So we've got a nice flat surface now for this to be glued on in its new spot up top there. The peg goes towards the rear, but it's not really going to matter now that it's not in that same spot. Let's see. They stopped making them with that iconic chopped rear, or at least last I checked. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so I want to use my knife and kind of put a little pilot hole as close to the center as I can after I put my proper glasses back on, so I can actually see the center. I want to get right in the center here and give a kind of a pilot hole. There we go. I didn't quite get that center. It's terrible. There. Okay, so now I'm going to grab a tiny little drill bit. One of these little guys. Start with a very small one. And get that in the center. And just twist it back and forth a little bit. Okay. Am I in the middle? Not quite. I'm not quite in the middle, but that's okay. We can adjust it. Now I've got something to start, so I can put this in there. It's funny how the rims look on the picture. What are the premiums in 98 with the cheap option, and then they look like yeah, they won't look that bad. They're basically, you know, what was popular in the 90s was the 5-star pattern, right? 5-star pattern. So the way mine look currently is they're black because I'm going to be painting them aluminum, right? But they're just basic 5-star rims. So now I've got this in my little rotary tool. I can find the center here. There we go. All right. With that done, we can step up the size. I'm going to go all the way up to this size. This is pretty close to the thickness of my paper clip. So let's just see. Don't have to go very far. Now if you realize you're not centered, just go in and kind of just put a little bit of pressure down in the direction towards the center, and that will help you get it centered on there. So there we go. So let's do a little test fit. Make sure I got the right size. Yep, goes in there perfect. Awesome. So we're done with that. Let's put this back. All right. So, if you can see this, I don't know if you can see it on the camera. So I've got my hole in there, and it's pretty centered. It's pretty close. So now we can take some CA glue and I'm just gonna put some on my little applicator. I mean, technically I don't even need that. I'll put some on my paper clip. I'll just bend the paper clip out like this. Put some on the tip of the paper clip. There we go. And shove it in the hole. Just like that. Just hold it there for a sec, let the CA glue do its thing, and there we go. So we've got this now on there. Nice Dremel. Is it wireless? No, unfortunately it is not wireless. That would be really awesome if it was, but it is not. It is corded. This is another thing I'm going to have to just let that sit for a minute. So just do that. Let that sit. Okay. Yeah, it's not wireless. It would be really cool if it was, but it's not. It's just USB cord. It's USB powered. Okay, so with that gluing, that's hardening, we can work on the other side. So let's go back to sawing away at this side. This one I want to try. Let's try actually using my regular X-Acto knife just to kind of make a notch. It doesn't work. It's got to be a saw. Viewers, stream, oh yeah. Okay, so that one done. I'm going to leave this one just like that for now because I want to remember which side I'm working on here. So my glue should be dry now. Yep. So I'm just going to trim some off here. I'm going to use my other nippers. Yeah, I've watched just about every single one of Night Shift's videos. There we go. Even tanks that I have no interest in, I still watch his channel just to learn about what he does. I've heard that some guys kind of criticize him in his miniature painting, his figures, saying that his painting technique makes him look too cartoonish. Okay, so that's how this one is going to go in there. So I've purposely left the pin really long so that I can have a guide there. And now I can glue this in place. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to put some CA glue on the pin, shove it in there, and then I'm going to put some regular glue because the glue will bond the plastic. Okay? And that's what we're going to do. And then one side will be done. So there we go. Not too much. I don't want to just soak it in the CA. There we go. Let that set up for a second here. The other thing I want to do is make sure it's straight. At this height, it wants to kind of be, it kind of comes up at an angle like this, which means our axle is wanting to have, what would that be? If your wheels are facing like this, with my fingertips being the top, you know, like that. Is that camber or is that caster? I don't know. But it wants to have too much of that. Whereas down here where they were mounted, it was basically straight across like this. But now sitting like this, up top here, now they're taller, they want to be up like this. So we want to resist that, which is why it's great that my holes are just a little bit bigger than the actual pin that we're using, because I can kind of bring that down and hold that more level and leave it like that. As far as our toe in and toe out, it's going to be the same. Alright, that's done. So, we can move back to... Yeah, I mean, what is the purpose of a highlight when you have the sun? Yeah, right? Where'd my other... There it is. Looking for my other... I want a nice flat surface again. There we go. Perfect. That's ready. Now, back to this thing. I forgot to put my lid back on. So once again, we're going to do that same process. We're going to try and find the center here. Kind of create a little bit of a divot. Then grab a small one. Create a little bit of a pilot hole. That looks pretty centered. Grab this again. I put it on the absolute minimum setting because I want to have control over it if it wants to walk on me. I got it pretty much dead center. And we'll grab the gray one again. Get us some depth. I see now I'm not quite centered, so let's walk that over. There we go. That is good enough. Okay. This one is a little bit tighter fit, but it's not going to matter. And the reason it's a little bit tighter is this isn't perfectly straight here. This has been bent a little bit, but it's not really going to matter. Actually, what I can do is straighten this up a little bit here, and I'll just cut it off. Like that. CA on the tip. Shove that in there. There we go. Make sure it's straight. Straightness is important on this part. Okay, she's holding. Let's grab that tweezer again. All right, let that sit for a minute. All right. Okay, so the nice thing about this, the whole fact that this is, you know, this is basically lowered, the nice thing about it is it's not going to actually affect our suspension at all, the fact that it's lowered. Because our suspension, the actual spring, still is going to go into that spot, still going to go into that spot, and where it mounts, where this spring goes up into the fender, there's no actual real mounting point. There's no locating spot. This just kind of gets hidden up inside here and is basically done, right? So that's kind of a beauty. I mean, it looks like we've got an ejector pin right in there and there. So will the car have a moving parts like the wheels, door, or hood? The doors won't open, but I've already, like, I don't know if you saw my first two parts or three parts where I cut the roof out. We have our T-roofs have been removed out of this. The doors are not going to be opening. The hood will be opening, but that's about it. And the wheels should be able to spin. They should be able to spin. Okay, so with this on here, what I'm going to do now is trim this excess back to that spot right there. Like that. So that should give me the clearance to actually put our shock absorber in its home where it belongs. Just like that. And I'm going to glue that in. I'll glue it in from the bottom and glue it in its spot here. So there's our shock on one side. That is now done. Now, if I want, let's just do a little test. While this is still, I'm just making sure that's going to be nice and dry. We can put this on here as our test fit. Let's get them in its spot, like so. Okay, and with that in, now we've got that lined up right perfectly with my line, and that's exactly what I needed. So to give an idea of how the tire is going to sit in the wheel well, I'll just use another one since that one wanted to be on the floor. We put that in the center there, line that up. So our tire is going to tuck up just touching the inner fender there. So the car is going to be a little bit lowered on the front end. It will be on the rear end too, but yeah. So let's remove this again. There we go. So that's good. I'm happy with the way that is. Okay, how's this looking now? The CA glue, my CA glue doesn't dry super fast, but it dries quick enough. Let's trim this off. Give us lots of excess on here. Okay. I was not expecting that to fly away so harshly. Now I have no idea where that excess was. I don't know where the other where my pin went. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. This goes in like this. Doink. In the same spot. And we can get that in the same location. Just like that. Okay. So, back with our CA glue. I am left-handed, so I gotta do this left-handedly. I got a lot of CA glue on this one, but that's okay. Just make sure we swirl it all around. Hold that in its spot. If you don't have patience and you want it to glue faster, you can always use the accelerant. Use accelerator on it. It's perfectly fine. Looks like this car's got a little bit of toe out, just a hair. But I'm sure when we get the rims, the wheels on there, there's probably enough play to take care of that, to eliminate it. But I am noticing this one wants to be a little bit down. I want to grab a ruler and just see. Let's see, you can cut stuff inside the box of some sort so it doesn't fly off into your coffee. That's my trick with fingernails. That is a good idea. That is a good idea. I just want to make sure my axles are straight here. And they look pretty straight. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. Okay, so we're going to let that dry a little bit. We're done with the CA glue, so let's clean this out. We're done with our little drill bits, so I can put those away. Okay, let's go back to our exhaust pipe. This guy here is now pretty solid. I want to do a little test fit on this and see. I don't want to just, I mean, I could just match this exactly the way it was and say, yep, it was right there. Cut that off right at that tip, but I want to take a look and see how far off before I trim it. Line up, there we go. This is going to go on here like this. You know what I should do? I'm going to glue this on right now. It's time to get these glued together because, well, they're going to get glued together anyway. So why not just glue them now? You know what I mean? Just glue them now. Get it done and over with. Okay. Alright, so those are glued together now. They should be happy. Let's just keep them together. Let that dry. This, having done that for a second, we can trim off our excess piece on this now. There we go. Still straight, yes it is. Let's grab our strut, put it in its home. There we go. And glue. And lots of glue up here. All right. So, our front suspension finally done. Our mufflers glued in. So we can put this like that. That's how it's going to go. And now I just want to compare how they had it, so I have an idea of where to cut. It basically had it lined up at this line here. So if I take a Sharpie and go like this, that tells me where it needs to be cut. Let's see. Yeah, what would possibly go wrong? Glue them. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So now I know where to trim this. The temptation is just to go snip, right? Right. But you do that, I'll just show you here. If I just trim this here like this, it pinches it. And although you can squish it back down into shape, it just doesn't look that great. It might actually look okay. Has it already been an hour? Wow. It looks okay, but it's just not that great because we got a bit of a top there. You know what? I think I can get away with that. I think I can get away with that. If I take this and go snip like this, we're at a spot where it's not, I didn't drill completely all that deep, so this is a little thicker than the tip was, but that is perfect. And we got the angle, but I have to drill that out. I gotta drill it out. It's just one of those things, I gotta do it. I need my drill bit, and that's the drill bit I used. We need to drill it. It's just the way it is. I'm not using my Dremel, I'm using this. You turn it up a little higher than normal. See how it gets stuck? Oh, we're through. Yay! Okay. We're drilled all the way through. Yeah, alright. Done, done, done. Alright guys, this is done. We have this drilled out nicely. So we've got our exhaust tip. Is it pretty? Not the best. It's not the prettiest. But it's also not bad. You know, it's an exhaust tip. These exhaust tips really aren't necessarily all that pretty. I want to file it down because we don't want sharp edges. You know, a good exhaust tip is actually had the tip rolled so that it stays. Now let's just do a double check and make sure that I haven't bent it in any funny direction. Come on, get in your hole. Get in your hole. There you are. No, looks good. She's gonna look good. She's gonna look good, guys. And she actually looks like a big, nice tube like she's supposed to. So custom exhaust, 3D printed? It is not 3D printed. This is the original exhaust, but I was trying to drill out the tip and I wound up melting the tip by mistake. And that's why I had to do this custom piece. This is just a piece of styrene tubing. That's all that is. This I can throw away now. Okay, so that is that. I'm really happy with this. Can I actually install that front piece? See, they want you to kind of have this thing 3/4 assembled. So we've got this done, we got that. Engine is there, but we don't have it installed yet. Step number 2, where are you? Where is step number 2? Step number 2 is installing this, but again, I can't install that because I got to paint the bottom chassis of the chassis white, because that's what color everything's going to be. I still haven't, although I've mostly painted the rear end, it's not quite done. A lot of detail stuff that needs to be painted still. But I think step number 3, or 4 actually, step number 4, they want us to put the brakes on, and this is all supposed to be black, just like the rear, but I don't know. If I paint this black, then I can't install it. It's kind of strange, you know, normally the undercarriage of a car is not that big of a deal, but in the more modern cars, a lot of times the undercarriage was the same color as the body, which makes everything, you know, different. If this car was from the 60s or something like that, definitely paint the whole thing under there black, regardless of the body of the car. But that's not the case with this one. So I just kind of have to wait. I'll throw some black on this, just like I did with the rear end. We'll paint the front of it black. Another thing I'm going to do, I'll do it off cameras, I'm going to paint the interior. The interior is going to be painted with not quite flat black. What was it? What do you say? If you had to do double-barreled exhaust tip, how would you go around it? Got some ideas? If I was doing a double barrel, like still coming out one side but having 2 tips, I would basically, what would I do? A couple of different options. Something a lot of guys like to do is they use solder. If you've got thick solder, like say something like this stuff could qualify as exhaust pipe, and you could just bend it to whatever shape you wanted, and you know, and use that, and then get some fine drill bit and drill that out, right? This of course is, you know, pretty thin, so I wouldn't use this. Another thing you could do is actually get some styrene rods, like you know, like these. This is exactly what I used here. This happens to be 1/8 inch tubing, and so they're actually tubes, right? You could heat them up and bend them and do that kind of thing. Personally, myself, my go-to would be the tubing. That would be what I would use. Or if I didn't have tubing, I'd use the same but a solid rod, which might be a little bit easier to bend. You could heat it up and bend it easier. That's what I would do. That would be my go-to. And then I would do solder next, would be my second choice. But that's what I would do. But it's about that time where I need to get going, which means this is going to have to be put on pause, really. What I'll do off camera, I'm going to put some black paint on my front suspension piece, and I'm going to paint the interior color black. It's not really black, it's NATO black. That's what the choice is. I have chosen to do for the interior NATO black. Why NATO black? Because it's a dark enough black that you can tell, hey, that's a black interior, but it's not so black that all the details disappear, right? NATO black is basically like an extremely dark gray is basically a good description of it. Yeah, anyway, other than that, that's where I have to leave it for today. I also got to do a little bit more paint work on our exhaust manifolds to get those looking a little bit more realistic. And yeah, so that is where I am going to leave it for today. And thanks you for watching. And don't forget to check out the description box for links. On my Instagram, you can see some close-up pictures of what I did with the T-roof and the seats, and you can see those belt buckles. And thanks for watching, and thanks for the chat, and we'll see you all in the next one.